So, usually when we sit down for these deep dives, we're looking at things on a pretty macro level.
Right, like global supply chains, the history of artificial intelligence.
Big stuff. Yeah, big external world-shifting events. But today, the scope is entirely microscopic. We are zooming all the way in.
We really are. But honestly, the stakes feel arguably higher than the collapse of an empire.
Oh, for sure. At least they do on a Friday night when you're just standing at a bar.
Exactly. Because today we're tackling the biological negotiation that is flirting. And it really is a negotiation.
It's funny because I think we tend to look at flirting as this, this trivial social pastime. It's a game, it's fun, maybe you buy someone a drink or send a risky text.
But the material we pulled together today suggests that is completely the wrong way to look at it.
Yeah, we have a massive stack of sources here. We've got evolutionary biology, we have professional mentalism, we even have modern dating coaching and psychological university studies.
And all of it points to the same thing. Flirting isn't just a social lubricant. It is a high-stakes, energetically expensive risk assessment.
So that is our mission today. We want to help you move from just guessing if someone is into you or, wondering why you struck out, to actually understanding the machinery under the hood of attraction.
We are going to cover everything from how your brain is literally wired to process signals, all the way to a modern tactic called the soft crab technique.
Which I am so excited to get to. The soft crab sounds absurd, but it is brilliant.
It is a total game changer. But we have to earn it first. We need to start with the biology.
Let's do it. So we're starting with a book called Innate by Kevin Mitchell. And he frames this whole mating dance in a way that makes it sound, incredibly dangerous.
Because biologically speaking, it is dangerous. Mitchell makes a really crucial point here. Sexual reproduction is actually a terrible idea from an efficiency standpoint.
It's a total disaster rate.
It really is.
Yeah.
You have to go out and find a mate, which burns calories. You have to court them. And out in the wild, the physical act of mating leaves you incredibly distracted and vulnerable to predators.
Right, whereas if we just cloned ourselves, like asexual reproduction, we'd be safe and efficient.
But boring.
Yeah.
Nature chose sex for genetic diversity. That is the biological payoff. It lets us adapt to changing environments and parasites.
But because the cost of doing that is so astronomically high, you're mixing your genes with a stranger and risking death, we evolved to be painfully picky.
Exactly. You weren't just looking for a warm body. You were unconsciously scanning for very specific fitness indicators: health, genetic quality, symmetry.
And this isn't just some vague mindset thing. This is literal hardware in the brain. The source mentions a specific region that I had never even heard of before. It has this terrible acronym.
Yes, the SDNPOA.
It sounds like a defunct government agency.
It stands for the sexually dimorphic nucleus of the preoptic area.
Okay, let's break that down.
Sure, it's a tiny cluster of cells in the hypothalamus. And dimorphic just means it physically looks different in males and females. In males, it's significantly larger, which is mostly due to testosterone exposure in the womb.
So this little cluster of cells is basically the engine room for attraction.
Effectively, yes. This is the hardware that orients us toward mating. It drives the preference sweat. You feel that intense pull towards someone across the crowded room. It's not just romance.
It's the SDNPOA lighting up and saying, target acquired.
Exactly. Go. But we don't just see everyone as a target. Mitchell introduces this concept of the Umwelt, which I thought was just fascinating.
Yeah, that's a German term, right?
Yes, it translates roughly to environment or surroundings.
Wow.
But in biology, it means the self-centered sensory bubble that every organism lives inside.
I used a tick as an example, which really stuck with me.
Right, think of a tick. A tick doesn't see a beautiful sunset or hear its entire fresh. Umwelt consists of the smell of butyric acid, basically sweat and body heat. Yeah. That is its entire universe.
And his point is that we have an umwelt too. We walk around thinking we see objective reality, but we totally don't.
We absolutely do not. When you walk into a party, you think you're seeing the whole room. You aren't. Your brain is actively filtering out about 99% of the data.
Because it's too much information.
Right. Instead, you are specifically scanning for biologically relevant signals within your umwelt. We call it beauty or charm, but your brain just sees it as fitness data.
So flirting, then, is basically just a simulation. We're exchanging data packets to see if our hardware is compatible without taking the actual risk of reproduction yet.
That is the perfect way to frame it. It's a safety buffer, a low-stakes simulation of a very high-stakes event.
Okay, so if flirting is data transmission, we need to talk about how to actually read the signal. Because this is where most people, myself definitely included, tend to crash and burn, we rely on that standard body language advice.
Which is often completely wrong, or at least wildly incomplete.
Yeah, we've all heard the classics. If they cross their arms, they're closed off. If they look down, they're shy.
And our next source, a professional magician and mentalist named Rich Ferguson, says you need to delete that advice from your brain right now.
Because his whole career relies on misdirection.
Right.
Reading people who are actively trying not to be read.
Exactly. And he says static body language is basically garbage. It's meaningless without context. If someone has their arms crossed, maybe they're defensive, sure, or maybe the air conditioning is blasting and they're just freezing.
Right. Or it's just a comfortable way to stand.
If you judge their interest based on a snapshot, you're going to get false positives and false negatives all night long.
So what's the alternative then? How do we actually read the room?
You have to look for the shift.
The shift.
It is dynamic. You have to establish a baseline first. How are they standing when they're just holding a drink and looking around? Then you introduce a stimulus.
Like what?
You walk up and buy them a drink. You pay them a compliment. You ask a slightly provocative question. Then and only then do you watch for deviation from their baseline.
Ferguson used a poker analogy for this that makes so much sense to me.
Right. It's a classic poker tell. When a player gets a monster hand, like pocket aces, they often have this microscopic subconscious reaction. They lean in just slightly, or they push their chips a tiny fraction of an inch toward the center of the table.
It's a subconscious signal of ownership.
Yes. It says, I love my cards, I want to be closer to this pot.
And in the context of a date, you are the pot.
Blunt, but yes. If you introduce a stimulus and they lean in, or they orient their torso toward you, that is the shift. That is the signal you're looking for. Their subconscious is saying, I want more of this interaction.
On the flip side, though, he flagged a very specific negative signal. He called it the overparenting handshake.
This is a massive red flag.
How does it work?
If you meet someone and go to shake their hand, pay close attention to the rotation of their wrist. If they turn their palm downward, forcing your hand underneath theirs, that is a dominance.
It's a weird power move right out of the gate.
It really is. Ferguson calls it the controlling personality tell. Whether they're doing it consciously or not, they are basically telling you, I am on top and you are on the bottom, before you've even exchanged names.
So if I get the palm down handshake from someone, I should probably just start checking my exit strategy.
I highly recommend it. But speaking of exits, Ferguson makes another brilliant point. We are incredibly good at lying with our faces, but we are terrible at lying with our feet.
The feet do not lie.
They don't, because we don't practice lying with them. From childhood, we are socially trained to act polite. So you can be talking to someone and they're nodding, they're smiling, making great eye contact.
Acting perfectly interested.
Exactly. But if you look down and their feet are pointed directly at the exit sign, or if they have their legs wrapped tightly around the legs of their bar stool,
They're anchoring themselves.
or preparing to bolt, their limbic system is screaming escape, even while their prefrontal cortex is forcing polite conversation. If the feet are out the door, the person is already gone.
Wow. Okay, so watch the shift, beware the palm down handshake, and always trust the feet. Let's pivot slightly and get into the actual mechanics of the interaction. The source on psychological flirting techniques brought up some data on eye contact and smiling that I found honestly a little bit unfair.
The smile dichotomy.
Yeah, the study suggests that smiling is not a universal winning strategy for everyone.
It's really fascinating data. For women, a genuine smile was rated as the single most attractive feature. It signals warmth, receptivity, health. In evolutionary terms, it's a huge green light.
But for men, it's different.
Very different. The study found that for men, a brooding or completely neutral expression was actually rated more effective than a big smile.
So the whole bad boy trope isn't just some cliche from 1990s teen movies. It's supported by actual data.
It seems to be, yes. The theory is that a brooding expression signals dominance or a certain dangerous quality. And going back to the biological wiring we talked about, sometimes safe isn't what the brain is hunting for. It's hunting for status and the capability to protect.
But you obviously can't just stand in the corner brooding like Batman all night. Eventually, you have to break the barrier. And the source cited this very specific study on touching that was super interesting. The forearm study.
Right, from 2007.
Yeah.
Researchers had men ask women for a dance in a nightclub. The control group just asked verbally. But the test group asked while touching the woman's forearm for just 1 or 2 seconds.
And the results.
The touch group was significantly more likely to get a yes. But the nuance here is everything. It wasn't a grab, It wasn't a lingering, creepy caress. It was a 1 to 2 second light contact on a completely neutral zone.
Why does that work so well?
Because it breaks the touch barrier without triggering a threat response in the amygdala. It acknowledges physical reality. It silently communicates that I am real and I am confident enough to bridge this physical gap. It spikes the intensity of the moment just enough to force a decision.
But the environment you're in plays a massive role in how that touch is received. And we really need to talk about music. This part of the research completely blew my mind. We looked at a book called Tone Deaf and a study from the University of Vienna about arousal transfer theory.
This is such a classic concept in psychology. Basically, your brain is surprisingly bad at pinpointing the exact source of its physiological arousal.
So if your heart is beating fast because of loud bass at a club, or because you just watched a scary movie,
And then you look over and see an attractive person, your brain misattributes that racing heart to the person, not the external.
so you're at a concert, your adrenaline is pumping, and suddenly the random person standing next to you looks like your soulmate.
Precisely. The Vienna study demonstrated this perfectly. Women who had just listened to music rated male faces as significantly more attractive and more dateable compared to women who sat in silence. The music primed the pump.
But not all music is created equal here. The genre breakdown they did was hilarious.
It is wild. Let's look at heavy metal. It actually enhanced the appeal of men to women. It made them seem more distinct, maybe tapping into that dangerous masculine energy we talked about.
But it had the exact opposite effect for men looking at women. It diminished the women's appeal.
Yes, and classical music was the reverse. Classical made women seem much more attractive to men, probably because it associates with elegance and sophistication. But it made men seem less attractive to women.
Maybe it felt too safe.
Could be. But the real killer, the absolute deal breaker across the board, was country music.
The deal breaker.
The study suggested that knowing a date was devoted to country music diminished attraction for both genders equally.
I feel like we just alienated a massive chunk of our listener base right there. But hey, we are just impartially reporting the data from the study. We don't make the rules.
Don't shoot the messenger. Yeah. But it does point to a very serious underlying truth about compatibility. The sources highlight that men actually prioritize shared music taste more than women do.
And there was that statistic about Australians.
Yes, 46% of Australians surveyed said they would literally give up sex before they gave up music.
That is a staggering statistic. It just goes to show that music isn't just background noise to us. It is a fundamental core identity marker.
It really is. So choose your first date playlist very wisely.
Okay, so we've got the biology, we understand body language shifts, we know the environment matters. Now I want to get tactical. We looked at material from Matthew Hussey, who is a giant in the modern dating coaching world. And he directly addresses the number one thing that stops all of this cold: fear.
Right, because rejection is the great filter. You can know all the science in the world, but if you are absolutely terrified to walk up and say hello, it's useless. Hussey talks a lot about this concept of plausible deniability.
I love this concept. It's essentially constructing a safety net for your own ego.
Exactly. If you walk up to a stranger and say, "I think you are stunning and I need to know you," that is an incredibly high-stakes gamble.
Because if they say no, it's a total rejection of you as a human being. It's devastating.
Right. Plausible deniability means instead of doing that, you throw out a pebble, a very small, low-stakes comment.
If they pick up the pebble, you're in. If they ignore it, you can just pretend you were talking to the air and walk away with your dignity intact.
Exactly. And this perfectly sets up the soft crab technique.
The soft crab. When I first read this in the outline, I genuinely assumed it was a dance move or like a weird yoga pose.
It does sound like one. But it's actually a specific script that Hussey uses to demonstrate how you can create an inside joke out of absolutely thin air.
Walk us through it. How does it work?
So imagine you're at a party or a buffet with someone you want to talk to. You don't comment on the weather, you don't tell them they look nice. Instead, you make a ridiculous, overly specific complaint. You look at the food spread and you say, "I cannot believe there is no soft crab here. What kind of party is this?"
Which is completely absurd because nobody expects soft crab at a standard house party.
That is the entire point. It's playful, it's slightly arrogant, but in a very funny, self-aware way, it invites them to look at you and go, "Who is this crazy person?"
But more importantly, it creates an us versus the world dynamic.
Yes, suddenly the two of you are the only ones in the room who understand the deep tragedy of the missing crab.
And the real genius is the follow-up text.
Right. Because 3 days later, you don't have to send a boring, "Hey, how are you?" text. You can just send them a picture of a crab. Or text them saying, found a place that actually respects the soft crab.
It's an instant callback.
And it maintains that plausible deniability. If they don't reply, whatever, it's just a dumb joke about seafood. You haven't confessed your dying love. But if they play along, you instantly have a connection. It's low risk, high reward.
Hussey pairs this with another tactic called believe, which sounds totally counterintuitive to me. You work so hard to get their attention, you make the crab joke, you get them laughing, and then you just walk away.
You have to. He calls this desire without dependence. You close the space, you lean in, you create that moment of intimacy, and then you purposefully withdraw. You go talk to your friends, you go get a drink.
You create a vacuum.
Exactly. If you just stand there hovering, waiting for their approval, you kill all the tension. You start to look needy. By walking away, you signal high confidence. You're showing that you have your own life. You're interested, but you aren't desperate.
It gives them space to wonder where you went. It's the difference between acting like a puppy and acting like a cat.
A cat that makes jokes about soft crabs, yes.
There was another tactical gambit from Hussey for the digital space. The arm wrestle.
Ah, yes. This is for when you're interacting on social media. You see a photo of them on Instagram looking fit or working out. The standard boring move is to comment something like, "You look hot."
Which is high stakes and frankly just generic.
Right. Instead, you say, "I could still beat you in an arm wrestle."
It's a compliment wrapped inside a challenge.
It validates them, letting them know you notice their arms, but it knocks them off the pedestal just slightly. It invites banter. It practically demands a response like, "Oh, really? You think so? Now you're in a real conversation." It's playful aggression.
And there was another one, the stock photo game, right?
Yes. So you're people watching with someone, and you see a guy leaning against a tree, and you say to your date, "Is that oak?" Because I'm more of a willow guy myself.
Oh, it makes zero sense.
Completely nonsensical. But it invites them to play along, to co-create a funny reality with you. It builds that shared bubble.
So we have the soft crab, the arm wrestle, the stock photo game. Let's pivot to the deep psychology of why these playful behaviors actually work. We looked at a therapist named Gary Brown who talked about mirroring.
The chameleon effect. This is very well documented in psychology. Humans are basically narcissists. We love ourselves. So we are naturally attracted to people who reflect us back to ourselves.
But you have to be careful with this, right? You can't just mimic every move they make like a mime in the park.
Please do not do that. It's about energy and micro movements. If they lean back and relax, you relax. If they lower their voice to a whisper, you drop your volume too. The source mentions that subtly mimicking nonverbal gestures actually increases sexual attractiveness ratings in studies because it builds deep subconscious rapport.
It says, "I am like you, we are part of the same tribe."
Exactly.
But there is a real tension here in the sources, isn't there? We have this hard-to-get advice which says mystery is the key to attraction. But then we have the authenticity argument.
It is a delicate tension. Psychology definitely confirms that mystery breeds attraction. We value what we have to work for. If you are an open book immediately, there's no reason to keep turning the pages.
But Hussey gives a really critical warning about the danger of mystery. He calls it the unhatched egg.
This is such a great metaphor. It's the trap of falling in love with potential. You meet someone mysterious. You don't actually know much about them, so your brain fills in all the blank spaces with your own perfect fantasy. You protect this egg, waiting for it to hatch into your ideal partner.
But you don't even know if there's a chicken inside.
It might be empty. It might be lizard. You are in love with the idea of them, not the reality. So while you want to maintain some mystery yourself, you have to be incredibly careful not to project depth onto someone else just because they're being vague.
And Gary Brown makes the point that while games like Believe work for sparking initial attraction, they do not sustain a real connection.
Right. Eventually you have to drop the act to be real. He emphasizes complimenting their behavior, not just objects. Saying nice shoes is a pickup line. Saying that was really kind of you to help that person is a genuine connection. It validates their character. That is how you bridge the gap from just flirting to actually dating.
So let's bring this all the way back. We started with the SDNPOA hardware in the brain. We moved through poker tells and country music deal breakers and ended up at the soft crab. What is the grand synthesis here for you? What's the takeaway?
I think the takeaway is that, yes, we are biological machines. We are wired to scan for fitness. We're easily influenced by the bass in the speakers. But we are machines that can learn to drive ourselves.
We can hack our own systems.
We can. When you know that eye contact triggers a physiological response, you can use it consciously. When you know that crossing your arms looks defensive, you can choose to open up. When you understand plausible deniability, you can stop being terrified of rejection and just throw the pebble.
It moves you from being a passive victim of attraction to being an active agent.
Precisely. And I think the most powerful concept to really sit with is that idea of desire without dependence.
That's the one that really stuck with me too.
It is the ultimate signal of confidence. It's the willingness to close the space, make the move, touch the forearm, and then be perfectly okay if it just doesn't work out.
Because if you're truly okay with walking away, you become the person they actually want to chase.
That is the great paradox of attraction. The less you desperately need it, the more you attract it.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a thought to mull over on your own. We've spent this entire deep dive talking about biological and physical space.
Right. The feet, the touch, the shared music.
But so much of dating today happens through an app on a screen where all of that biological weld is just completely stripped away.
You don't have the physiological arousal from a shared environment. You can't see a baseline shift in their posture.
Exactly. So you really have to wonder if our evolutionary hardware is just completely unequipped for the digital dating age. And if we're all just misfiring because the sensory data we evolved for millions of years to read simply isn't there anymore.
That is a terrifying and fascinating thought.
Something to think about the next time you're swiping. But for now, your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to go out and test the soft crab theory. Find a buffet. Complain about the lack of specific seafood. See if you can create a world of two.
And for the love of everything, check your handshake. Keep that palm vertical. Do not overparent your date.
Solid advice. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today. We will